Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of our podcast RNV Talks, in which we will be discussing many different aspects of the history and culture of the Roma minority. The podcast is released as part of the project EUROMIJA, arranged by the Roma National Council of Croatia in the framework of the European Solidarity Corps. Today our talk will be about minority language protection with a focus on Boyash and Calò.
Language is a central part of national or ethnic identity, and this is true for everyone. The way we speak reflects our culture, values, and traditions, but these are even more important for minorities, defined by international and national documents all around the world as groups of people who share a common culture, religion, or language that differs from the majority of the population in a country. Considering all these elements is crucial, especially when discussing how to protect the rights of minority groups. Indeed, minority identities stem from characteristics that are unique and that can easily be overlooked or even suppressed by the majority. That is why, among the many rights granted to minorities, there are also linguistic rights. They protect the possibility for members of minorities and of minority groups as a whole to use their native languages in both private and public life. This includes, for example, getting education in their own language, having the right to communicate with government officials in that language, and having access to minority-related cultural life. These rights have been established by many international documents like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. But the leading role was for sure taken by the Council of Europe, which adopted two major documents in the 1990s, the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities and the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages. Both of them bind countries to protect and promote minority languages in everyday life, from schools and courts to media and cultural events. All minority languages are granted general protection, which include promoting tolerance and mutual understanding and emphasizing their cultural value. However, according to the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages, states can also offer additional protection to some languages by encouraging and promoting their use in the fields of education, media, culture, administrative use, judicial system, and economic and social life in general. For what concerns Croatia and Roma people, Boyash is central. Boyash is the language spoken by almost all Roma people residing in the country and is only granted basic protection, meaning that its speakers are not entitled to use it in official documents when addressing authorities or to receive education in their language. Croatia has also adopted multiple national laws throughout the decades. The main one was adopted in 2002, when the country passed the constitutional law on the rights of national minorities, which guarantees the use of minority languages in education, public administration, and media, and it also allows for proportional representation in government bodies. But, as it happens in many countries, there is a big gap between what's written in the law and what actually happens on the ground. Local politics, budget limitations, or even prejudice can all get in the way. Boyash, for example, is now recognized as a minority language in Croatia, but many Roma people still don't receive education in it or use it in official contexts. Without real support, recognition on paper doesn't really translate to preservation in practice. So, it is important to remember that protecting minority languages is about recognizing people, making them feel seen, heard, and validated. It also means ensuring that someone's identity isn't erased because they speak a different language, but rather that diversity and inclusion are celebrated and cherished.
People belonging to Boyash community do not speak Romani, and the vast majority of them are either bilinguals, Boyash and local languages, or native speakers of only local languages. It's vital to note here that the Boyash language is not a dialect of Romani or somehow related to it. Romani belongs to Indic languages and Boyash is close to Romanian language. To avoid confusion, Romanian is a language spread on the territory of modern Romania. Some linguists consider Boyash as archaic Romanian. In Croatia, the Boyash people mostly live in the counties of Međimurje and Baranja. It's important to note here that Boyash is the second popular language of Roma in Croatia, according to the recent research. A variant of Boyash language spoken in Croatia is barely studied by linguists and ethnologists. The main solid work was published in 1999 by Nicolae Saramandu, a Romanian dialectologist. In addition, he created a corpus of 33 texts, which are phonetically transcribed conversations with local interlocutors. However, there is still a lack of studies of Boyash spoken in Croatia, although the Boyash make up a significant percentage of the Roma minority. Based on subdialectal features of the Boyash language, speakers identify themselves either as Munteni, mostly in Baranja, or Ardeleni, mostly in Međimurje. In addition to the geographical factor, there is also a cultural one, since the Munteni speakers are mainly Orthodox Christians, while the Ardeleni speakers are Catholics. Munteni-Ardeleni division is still mainly linguistic, and it's still very indicative that Boyash is rather a general name for a group of variants of the same language, which differ significantly not only from country to country, but also from region to region. The big problem is that Boyash school children do not study their language in schools. At most they speak Boyash at home with their families. Therefore, they cannot write or read in this language, because the school curriculum does not provide for this. Boyash already experiences a lack of written texts and learning materials, but the current situation promotes positive change. Nevertheless, individual researchers and activists together with NGO started to draw attention to Boyash. A quite recent example is that Handbook for Learning Boyash and Boyash Croatian Dictionary, containing around 300 words, were written by Petar Radosavljević, professor of the University of Zagreb. In Međimurje, workshops on basics Boyash were organized for teachers working with Boyash students. At least that's what local newspapers reported. Despite their long-standing presence and distinct linguistic heritage, the Boyash remain underrepresented in both academic studies and national education system. The lack of institutional support for their language has led to diminished literacy in Boyash among younger generations, particularly in Croatia. However, recent efforts by individual researchers and local communities offer people for culture and linguistic revitalization. Initiatives like educational handbooks and teacher training workshops signal a growing awareness of the need to preserve and support the Boyash identity, ensuring it continues to thrive in the face of historical and social challenges.
The Census of Population, Households and Dwellings in the Republic of Croatia is the biggest survey that presents information about the number of territorial distribution of population by demographic, economic, educational, migration and other characteristics, as well as the state of the household and dwellings. It is conducted every 10 years.
What are the methods of collecting the data?
The latest census of 2021 was conducted in two ways: through self-enumeration by independently completing the online version of the questionnaire, and on-site field enumeration by using electronic devices to enumerate all census units that had not been enumerated independently. Also, for people speaking different languages, there was a possibility to access a sample of the questionnaire in English or in the languages of ethnic minorities, a total of 21 languages. However, the answers had to be given in Croatian and Latin script. In the results of the 2021 census, the Roma population in Croatia was 17,980, representing 0.46% of the whole population. Croatia recognizes 22 minorities in their country, and one of them is the Roma people. And because of this, they receive help from the government for their political, social, and cultural development, supported by constitution and specific policies. Roma people are considered to be the most vulnerable ethnic group in Croatia, and since 2003, the government has developed specialized measures for supporting their social inclusion. The support they receive in the means of funds, policies, and actions are measured by the data that is collected and information about the number of Roma people throughout Croatia. One of the problems that arises is the Roma people differ by traditions, dialect, and nationality, defined by branches, something that is not well recognized by the collected data. As in the means of the Boyash language that is spoken by the majority of Roma people in Croatia, it is not put as an option in the questionnaire of the census, as it is not well recognized and implemented by the Croatian government. Because of that, people from this community put as a mother tongue the Roma language, and in reality the data that is collected is not precise. As of this, under recognition, the Roma people who speak Boyash language cannot receive the funds and the help that they need to save their language by studying it in schools and having the recognition of speaking it and using it in public.
Why is Boyash language not put in the census questionnaire?
The reason lies behind how the question for the mother tongue was structured. It was an open-ended question, and instead of providing a list of specific languages to choose from, respondents who did not declare Croatian as their mother tongue were required to write in their language. And because the Boyash language is a variety of Romanian spoken by the majority of Romani people in Croatia, while it is a distinct dialect, it falls under the broader category of other languages. And the recognized other languages does not include Boyash language, but includes the Roma language.
Across the continent, Roma communities have developed and preserved a variety of languages, from Romani dialects rooted in Indo-Aryan origins to Para-Romani varieties like Calò in Spain or Boyash in parts of Central and Eastern Europe. These languages are not only linguistic systems, they are forms of cultural survival, and yet they have been repeatedly silenced. In many European countries, the use of Romani languages was actively banned in schools and public spaces. Roma children were punished for speaking their mother tongue. Language was treated as a threat, something dirty, primitive, or unworthy of institutional recognition. Instead of supporting multilingualism, states opted to force assimilation, framing it as integration. The result was a generation of language loss and a deep sense of shame around linguistic identity. One striking example is Spain, where the Roma, or Gitanos, have been present for over 600 years. Their variety of the language, Calò, is a para-Romani language, preserving Romani vocabulary while using Spanish grammar. It is a blend of the original Romani language and local Romance languages, mainly Spanish.
What happened to the Calò during the dictatorship?
During Franco's dictatorship, all minority languages were repressed, including Catalan, Basque, and Galician. But for Calò, the consequences were even more severe. It was not only banned, it was denied recognition, it was ignored or erased completely. After Franco's death, these regional languages, Catalan, Basque, and Galician, were gradually reintroduced into public life, and today they have official status in their respective regions. But Calò was never recognized as a language, was never included in education, culture, or language preservation policies. It was deemed non-existent, and even progressive intellectuals or politicians who defended minority languages often excluded Calò from their efforts.
How many people speak Calò nowadays?
Calò is currently spoken by an estimated 65,000 to 170,000 people in Spain, France, Portugal, and Brazil, a very low number, which is why it is considered an endangered language, with very fluent speakers and almost no formal spaces for transmission. It is not covered by Spain under the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages, since no autonomous community listed it in its Statute of Autonomy. Neither France or Portugal protect any non-official languages under the Charter. There are, however, several European countries that officially recognize Romani as a minority language protected under the European Charter, or through their own national laws, for example, Hungary, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Romania, or North Macedonia. Nevertheless, it is a language of memory, heard in fragments, in lullabies, in coded expressions of resilience, but not supported by the state. Despite calls from Roma organization and linguistic experts, Spain has yet to give Calò any meaningful institutional protection.
That was all from us for today. We hope you enjoyed our little talk. You can find the link to all the articles we wrote on these topics in the description of this episode. Do not forget to follow us on our social media accounts and website to stay in touch with us and our job here at RNV. Bye!